Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hang out, this nerd.
Ted.
And we asked the question today, can you mix steampunk, fantasy, and 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons in your game?
Hey guys, jump down in the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get RPG tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
We had a request come in on Patreon by Craig Huber, and he wants us to help him out with an idea he has. He wants to run a steampunk, probably like Victorian era game, and I think he wants to use 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which is funny because we actually kind of fielded this for another Patreon in one of our first 9 of the Nag Google Hangouts. So yeah, we did that with Christopher Evans. So you could probably go and try and take a look at that and see some of the things we discussed. Yeah, one of the first things I'm going to say is not every game system is cut out for every kind of genre or scenario you want to run.
Yeah, certain themes just aren't going to really jive with what's there. Now, with this particular concept, given that there are rules for guns and that kind of stuff in some of the books, you have what you need to make it work for 5th edition.
You do. So let's see. I got a little list here of some points.
Cheat sheets, woohoo!
Yeah. You know, basically, like I said, steampunk fantasy elements, and one of his big questions was to go with alternate history or make up your own.
So alternate Earth or kind of homebrew thing. Normally, I'm all about the homebrew. And that's the way I would lean, but it's really going to determine upon what kind of feel are you looking to have for your game. If you have it so that you have an alternate Earth, okay, well, are you allowing the multiple races and you're going to treat them as their own separate races, or are they deviations off of the human species and how things have evolved in your alternate version? Oh yes, we're all human, but the very sophisticated, long-lived through science and magic combined have made these humans more elf-like. The more subterranean versions wound up going to be like dwarves, and you could have the more primal who lost their way into society, or lost their way of society. They're more the half-orcs and the orcs.
So there's actually quite a few examples of this. Now, there's definitely some different things. There's some differences, and I had to go look it up because there's a couple series that I've kind of been following and reading. I've gotten a little bored with traditional sword and pony fantasy, so I went on this spree where I was like looking into a lot more steampunk and things like that. Ted had turned me on to a long time ago Dresden Files, which is modern day, but it does deal a lot with mixing fantasy elements with real world elements, and you could actually lift some of those explanations into your game, and you make things a lot smoother. The other one is Crown and Key series by Clay and Susan Griffith, and that is very much a Victorian era there's definitely some steampunk elements, but to me it's very much more like a Dresden Files type story set back in Victorian times. Yeah, it may even be inspired by that works. I have no idea, but it literally made me think of Dresden Files, Jim Butcher, and it starts off with one guy who is basically like a mage or in the occult, and around him kind of forms this group of monster hunters. Some of them are actually monsters. So it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that series. So that would be a good one to check out. It does talk about it does incorporate real history into it, but it doesn't really focus on it.
Yeah, speaking of Jim Butcher, even though there's only one book in the series so far, the Aeronaut's Windlass is another one that would fit into that Victorian-esque situation. It 100% fits into the steampunk,
yes,
flying pirate ships and that kind of stuff. So that's Aeronaut's Windlass by also Jim Butcher.
Definitely not alternate history at all.
Nope.
Then we have the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. Now that one actually is heavy steampunk, Victorian era, alternate history. Again, it's the backdrop doesn't really focus on it a whole lot, but it's definitely there. Names will drop that you'll recognize and be familiar to you, but they don't focus on it. Now, this one is heavy steampunk with a little bit of the occult mixed in. And then later on it gets a little sci-fi. So you get a lot of things mixed into your peanut butter there. Nice. Now the one that, if you're looking at to do alternate history, this was the best for me off of that, and that is the Burton and Swinb adventures. And there's like 5 or 6 of them out. That's by Mark Hoder. Oh, sorry, that Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. That's Pip Ballantyne and T. Morris. Mark Hoder does a Burton and Swinb adventure. You may even recognize the names right in the title of the series. They're famous people from history. One of them being a poet, and one of them being an explorer.
If Dave remembers, we'll try to have the links down below.
Yes, I definitely want to put the links below. This one, I love the alternate history stuff they put in it. At first, it really starts off real slow with the steampunk stuff, but then it really starts to gain momentum, and they deal a lot with eugenics as well as the steampunk technologies.
So does it actually step into the actual history angle of things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. It's so cool when you basically, like, if this was a campaign, when you see the NPCs that they're interacting with are literally figures from history.
Nice.
Sometimes good guys, sometimes bad guys. You see names like Darwin in there. Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences has like Edison in there and Tesla in there.
Nice.
The Burton and Swinb, they have a ton of the different fictional characters. So both of them are a lot of fun. The more I think about it, Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences has more and more figures from history as well as they use as characters in the book. So those two would definitely be a good grounding, a good basis for alternate histories. And here's the thing, right? Do you want to play Marvel or do you want to play DC? Because, Marvel uses basically real world geography and DC makes up their own. And when I was running Mutants and Masterminds, I really loved the fact that I could play with pop culture and stuff like that. And it's also one of the things that draws me to the Dresden Files is all the pop culture references. which is
hysterical because Dresden is not into pop culture. So it's usually the people around him making
Well, he
references.
does, but they're all old references,
right,
because after a certain point he can't interact with technology.
Right.
But yeah, so like that part I really enjoy, and so that's one of the things you have to think about when you're putting together this kind of game. And the other thing is, like, if you use an alternate history, there's a lot of stuff you don't actually have to make up. Like, you can literally just lift things right from history, and you can run a campaign around that. You want to do a Jack the Ripper game? Well, okay, just do a little research about whatever was known about Jack the Ripper, and then you
fill in the details.
Fill it in however you want. Maybe in your game, Jack the Ripper can be some kind of blood cultist or something. Yeah, but you have that basis to work with. I think the most challenging thing is going to be taking, the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons system and pushing it into like a steampunk game, especially if you want to go into more sci-fi later on.
Mm-hmm.
D&D doesn't do that very well. It never has, and it's great for running D&D games.
Right.
But once you start getting out of that, it becomes a little more difficult. Now, are you going to have to make up classes in order to fill roles? They dropped the Artificer, which is going to be very helpful for playing in that type of game. The other ones you might have to tweak, like we said, like you might have to add guns. Maybe you have to give some of the fighter classes access to proficiency with guns. And again, like if you don't care about balance, it's not going to matter at all. But guns tend to shift the balance, especially early on.
If Ryan were here, Ryan would tell us that, like, once you get into the modern rule set, there's no reason to not pick up a gun. Guns just do more damage. And, I can shoot you across the room. I don't need to close the distance and swing a sword at you. That's going to do less damage than this gun.
Right, or throw a grenade. But that's modern, no. If you're talking Victorian area, at least the technology isn't as advanced. So that's going to scale it back a little bit and keep things a little more even.
But when you're talking about technology and magic coexisting, there's nothing to say that you couldn't have like the rule set for guns there, and it's things created by tech and magic.
Well, yeah, you could definitely intermingle them. But I would think, like, if you're going to use muskets and stuff like that, like, one of the saving graces is they're probably going to have load properties. You're not going to be able to load them fast.
Yep.
The technology is maybe you use the mischance. Also, you might want to look at Matt Mercer's gunslinger class in order to incorporate that as well. I feel like his was it a blood hunter or witch hunter? I forget what the latest incarnation.
It was originally witch hunter, and then because the issue of the name, because it's not directly associated with the movie, it's now blood hunter.
Okay, so that's also probably kind of thematic depending on what type of game you're like. In the Crown and the Key, like, that would definitely be super thematic. They actually have a character that's very much like that in there, minus any of the magic-y stuff. But yeah, so that also would work. It really comes down to how much work you want to do and what is your vision of the game. One of the biggest things I would say too is start small and work your way out. Try and, especially if you start your characters at a lower level, maybe they're only dealing with threats in one particular city, they're not traveling outward, and really flesh out some areas in that city where they might hang out, and give it a feel for the campaign world you're trying to create, and tie them into that place.
So I would look at what kind of feel you're looking for. I feel that when you're trying to do an alternate history, you want to be able to periodically have real historical events or characters make a play. If you don't want to do that research, you don't want to deal with that kind of burden, then go fantasy. Go, as Dave would say, DC. If you want to have those kind of connections,
if you don't want to hit type something into Google and hit enter, then yeah, do that.
But if you are looking to have that extra little bit of research and play and have these stories weave in and around characters and moments in history and complete deviations from history because it's an alternate, well, then you can go with the more Marvel side of the alternate history.
And to me, that's the fun of running the alternate history, is actually playing with those things that actually happen and then tweaking them and changing them, right? So things play out just the way your players would expect them to, and then boom, curveball. You change something. Edison was actually a werewolf, or whatever you want to do that's crazy.
Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer.
Exactly. Yeah, and also that's the other thing. We're getting all these Zombies and Prejudice, and
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer. And what was the third one?
There was definitely wasn't there a Loch Ness Monster one or something?
It was like something in sea monsters. I don't remember what it was. Oh, I'm certain somebody out there knows.
Yeah, so there's definitely places to draw inspiration from. I think it sounds like a fun game. I don't again, if you're looking for an alternate system, Cypher System would work great for this. Fate would work great for this. There's definitely some generic systems out there that would require no shoehorning, right, if you didn't want to do 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But if that's your jam and that's all your players want to play, go for it. You can still probably have a good time and make a fun game of this.
I agree. So what do you guys think? Do you do these kind of alternate histories and steampunky kind of stuff? Give us some stories and comments down below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.